Welcome to the Men's Alliance podcast. Guys, I had an incredible conversation with Dr. Gary Habermas. Gary is professor, scholar, New Testament theologian, professor at Liberty University, and really well known for some of his books he's written, specifically The Case for the Resurrection of Jesus, also The Historical Jesus, and his most recent 3-volume masterpiece titled On the Resurrection. So Dr. Habermas is the foremost living expert in the world on the resurrection. And so he's also the foremost proponent of the minimal facts argument. He really put that argument together, and it's become one of the most kind of popular arguments for Christianity in this current generation. It's one we talk a lot about in Answer with Truth and in our Carry the Fire course. But it's a unique, different area of this conversation that I had with him that I really want you guys to listen to today. So instead of just telling you so many of the apologetics things about Dr. Habermas that you already know, we're going to listen to a section of this conversation that's much more personal and hits much more close to home than maybe the apologetics material we're already familiar with. Listen to this. As a man who's written books about Jesus, about the resurrection, do you ever have any doubts? Do you ever find yourself doubting either God or Christianity or the resurrection? Are you at 100%?
This is a horrible thing to come up at the end of the interview, but I'll give you the hard approach. I was a doubter for 20 years. The first 10 years, it ran my life. The second 10 years, it almost ran my life. It was getting a little bit better. But I've told my testimony many times how I almost became a Buddhist. Okay, two things. I would never embrace Buddhism as a philosophy or as a metaphysic. But I meant there was a view going around in the 80s and 90s that Buddhism was a proper metaphysic for modern physics. It was the religion for modern physicists. And they gave a bunch of similarities and so on. Later, just the silliest thing I could think of. But that almost becoming a Buddhist was not when I was 10, 18, or 25 years old. It was after I got my PhD and I was already teaching and I'd already pastored. So yes, I've had, by the way, I'll tell you, in case this blesses somebody, I remember walking through the house. I was in Montana. My first teaching position was in a small college, Christian college in Montana. And everybody going to bed. I developed my bad habits of staying up all night. And I was walking around the house at about 1 o'clock in the morning, and it occurred to me, I thought, oh no, I think I'm closer to Buddhism than I thought I was. And I did some quick evaluation. I thought, I wonder if I crossed the line already. Am I trusting Buddha and not Jesus? I can tell you what happened because there's the event associated with it. But I dropped down on my knees, Goose. I fell down on my knees on the couch in my living room and said, Lord, how I could ever have gotten to this state is unbelievable to me. It's sick that I could have believed this stuff. So anyway, yeah, I was so close that when I evaluated it, I wonder if I'd already crossed the line. I didn't tell people at the Christian school. It was a struggle I was going through. And so, yes, I've had a lot of doubts. But my doubts basically stopped in the early 90s, about 91. And my wife died in 95. And when she died, I kept a little diary, and I wrote in the diary, shoot, probably my doubts are going to come back again. This is probably going to make my doubts come back again. They never, ever did. They never came back. I'm so thankful to the Lord for that. And since 91, I don't say I've never wrestled with the tough question, but I've had what you can call doubts and question your faith. I've had virtually no questions for, 34 years? No questions for 34 years, but I paid the price for the first 20 years. Because I used to argue with Christians. I get them mad at me. So, yeah, I've been through it. But here's the bottom line. Let's take the number one objection to Christianity. The Bible is full of errors. Or more specifically, the Gospels are full of errors. Okay, good. Let's admit every potential error in Scripture. That's not my position. Everybody knows where I teach. We have a doctrinal statement here. I don't believe this. But let's say every doubt about the authenticity of the Bible is true, and it's full of errors. Well, if I'm going to go do a master's thesis or a PhD on George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or anybody, I'm going to use books down from the shelf that have errors in them. They all have lies. Maybe his best friend told a lie about him, but I still am going to rely. I'm going to rely on him being the general during this Revolutionary War, but not rely on the chopping down the cherry tree and saying he would never tell his dead lie, or throwing a silver dollar across the Potomac River. No, because we've got standards to check these things. But every book I read has errors, every factual book. Let's say the Bible's full of them. Does somebody grant those 6 facts? Yeah. They may have a different interpretation, but can they explain away the resurrection? No.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, well, Michael Kona tells this story everywhere, and he said I can use his name, I can tell. He's got a recent book, and he starts with the book at the beginning. It's called The Baltimore Call. And he called me one night, and he said, I'm getting sick and tired of reading about all these errors in Scripture. And what about them? And I said, Mike, did Jesus rise from the dead? Yeah, he rose from the dead, but the Bible's seems to be full of errors. What should I do with this, Mike? Did Jesus rise from the dead? Yeah, but I'm really bothered about having a Bible that's like Swiss cheese. Okay, Mike, calm down. We're very, very close. And I said, did the resurrection happen? Yes. Okay, Mike, how do we know the resurrection is true? And back in 1989, when this happened, in 1989, Mike said, because of the minimal facts argument. I said, okay, we have the minimal facts argument for the resurrection, right? Yeah. I don't want to say who cares if there's errors in the Bible. I don't want to say that. I'm just saying, do we have enough? And if somebody proves there are errors in the Bible, do we still have the resurrection? He thought about it. Yes, we do. Wow. I'm feeling better already. Hey, one more question. This is true. One more question. What about Joshua being told to kill all the people in ancient Israel? Why would God say kill the men, the good-for-nothing men, but also the women and children? Why? I said, Mike, did Jesus rise from the dead? He said, yes. And finally he said, I get your point. And now he goes on and lectures as I do. And when skeptics at universities say the Bible's full of errors, you can't use it, I'll say, which of my minimal facts don't you like and why? And if there's still a resurrection, I don't care what you think about the Bible. Let's deal first with what you think about the gospel. So
that's great.
That got me through the doubts. But Mike said, I've never questioned the resurrection after that phone call. I say it to God's glory. I didn't learn this argument to help people. I learned the argument to help me. I'm sorry I'm selfish, but I was really struggling. I had my PhD, by the way, when I went through that Buddhist phase. It came after my PhD. It can happen to anybody.
That's incredible. I think, just hearing you share that, man, that's so awesome to hear, you being so real. And it highlights the fact that everybody has doubts.
Yes, they do, because we're human.
It's okay. It's okay. You can give yourself permission to have doubts and to look into the questions. Whatever hard questions you're wrestling with, don't run from them. Look into them. There's great answers.
And don't let your pastor, my pastor was a great preacher. I went to a German Baptist church, great schooling. He begged me to give up my apologetics because he thought it was causing my doubts. And I was showing him the books I was reading. He came over to our house. And when my mother, who loved him, heard him say that, she said, please please sell your books. Please don't do this anymore. And it's a long story, but it was basically my mother that made a question that answered my Buddhist doubt. My mom, she's deceased, but she asked 2 questions. It was great. By the way, I'll go ahead and say them.
Yeah.
Here's the 2 questions that made me think. She said, how are you doing? I was in Montana teaching. We're from Detroit. We're a long way away. How you doing? Well, Mom, I'm thinking that in 2 or 3 months, there's a good chance I'm going to be a Buddhist. I'm on a journey. Really? Yeah, Gary, I've heard you say that before, and I know you. I know my son. You are not on a journey. Well, Mom, I'm not trying to pull rank on you, but unless you read this stuff, you don't know. All right. You want to play this game? And my mom was not combative at all. Let me ask you a question. Would you trade Jesus for the Buddha right now? Well, and now a PhD, you try to pull rank on your mom, right? Mom, I didn't say I was ready to take Buddha right now. I started this conversation by saying in 2 or 3 months. I'm not going to let you say that. Would you trade Buddha for Jesus right now? And Goose, I honestly got the sick feeling in my stomach immediately, and I said, here's what I said to her. Trade Jesus for a fat man who sits on the ground with his legs crossed? No, I'm not ready. She said, I thought not. All right, so she put the first dagger in. And then she said, one more question. Why won't you trade Jesus, Buddha? Let's see how it works. Why won't you trade Jesus for Buddha? And I had this rush come into me. I don't know if I'd felt this for 20 years, maybe never. But here's what I said to her on the phone. Mom, I'm embarrassed. But I wouldn't make the trade because I just realized, because of your question, I'm in love with that Jesus that I wouldn't trade. I'm not going to trade Jesus for a fat man, and it's because I'm in love with Jesus. And she goes, I thought so. Let's not talk about your doubts anymore. I thought, golly, I'd like to say I've never lost a professional debate. I'd like to say that, but I'm saying whipped by your mom? Come on. And I've told her many times. She goes, well, it was easy for me to do that because I know your heart. Apparently you don't. Oh, Mom, you just put another dagger in there. But that was the end of my. I'd already walked. No, I hadn't walked away from it because I told her 2 to 3 months. And she stopped the process, and then I realized later, and that's when I dropped down on my knees and I rededicated my life to the Lord is what I did. But after telling him for 10 minutes that I was so tired of what I did and how I treated his grace the way I did, I would never, don't get me wrong, I never told my Christian students. I never told my Christian leaders, not because I didn't want to be fired. I didn't tell them because I didn't want to lead anybody astray. Well, see, that's another reason that I wasn't really going there. I didn't want to lead anybody astray. I didn't want to cause them to have doubts. Why not? Because they've got the true view. Whoops, I said it again. You know, that kind of thing.
That's incredible.
That's my story. I've told it very seldom, but Mom put the icing on the cake for me.
Man, you can't argue with Mom.
No. No. But she was good. Would you trade her for Buddha right now? Mom, I said 2 to 3 months. No, I want to know if you do it right now. It was good.
That's awesome. I don't know about you guys, but I really found that incredible to hear this, this great man of faith, author of all these books. He has the same doubts that we do. He has the same struggles and questions that we do. So I really, just appreciate how open and transparent he was with sharing his personal doubts and struggles with us. Now, we all know that sometimes no matter how much evidence for Christianity we give a person, they're just not always going to become a Christian based on the evidence. And so listen to this next part where Dr. Habermas is really sharing with us about how for many people, himself included, it's got a lot more to do with personal tragedy and loss than just evidence. I feel so often that you know, many people who object to Christianity, they're angry at God. They're angry at God for some sort of, personal tragedy, loss, trauma in their life.
Yeah, that's
And,
sad.
yeah. And there's no amount of
Christians
evidence.
have it too. I'm remarried for 29 years because my wife of 23 years died. The mother of my 4 children died of stomach cancer when she was only 43 years old.
Mm.
And I'm not saying I wasn't upset. I went through a really rough time, but I was more concerned about my kids because after it was over, 2 of them, the 2 older ones, 16 and 21, they both came to talk to me after their mom died. And they both said to me, not knowing the other one had said this, they both said to me, Dad, what am I going to do? My best friend just died. My best friend's been ripped out of my life like they were never there. And they were all, but that comment, my best friend just died. We all deal with this kind of stuff. I've got a really good friend here whose wife died in childbirth. He's got a PhD in apologetics. He's a Greek teacher. He's very, very good. But he's still not, he's still working with his kids. He's got 3 kids, including when she died, she gave birth to twins. And then she died. It happens to all of us. And we have to deal with evil. And of course, there's some really good responses to evil, but it doesn't prove Christianity or atheism.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the big question is, that most people want to ask God if, why is there so much suffering and evil in the world?
And here's a real quick question you can ask a person who says that if they're a believer. Okay, let me ask you a question. All right. Why didn't God answer Jesus' prayer when he said, my God, why have you forsaken me? How come he didn't take Jesus down and heal him immediately after all the healing Jesus went through? I don't know. Well, why didn't God do it? I think God did answer his prayer. And the way I say it is, it's a cop-out. I'll say he answered his prayer on Sunday morning. That means we go through a lot of stuff and then we're either healed here and or healed there. But, and here's my comeback. Hebrews says twice that Jesus suffered and grew through his suffering. Jesus grew by his suffering in Hebrews. I think suffering, if we use it the right way, it's the strongest. It can be the strongest pusher away from faith. It can be the strongest pusher to faith. And I hope there are people around to help the person to see. And until you can answer the question, why did God let Jesus suffer? Until you can answer that and be satisfied with your answer, don't ask God about your suffering until you've been crucified. Then you can ask, and if you're the Son of God, by the way, until you can answer that question, I know it's hard, but don't walk away because Jesus didn't. And Jesus got stronger. You can say, well, he really didn't have any life left after that. How could he learn obedience? That's what Hebrews says. He learned obedience by his suffering. No, but my good friend Jim Wallace, J. Warner Wallace, he said one time, a long time ago, he said, who said we cannot grow in eternity? Who says all our learning stops here? There are some New Testament verses that say we're going to keep learning. So you better take what happened to you and use it for good, because you'll be 10 times better for it, 100 times better for it than you will to complain and be angry and be ticked, because you can't answer Jesus' objection. You can't answer the why me objection that Jesus asked.
Well, yeah, that's good. In the course of our conversation together, one fascinating topic that came up is near-death experiences, or NDEs. And these are instances where a person clinically dies in a hospital. Their heart stops. The doctors quit working on them. They're pronounced dead. And then they come back alive, much to the surprise of, the doctors and everyone. And they have a story to tell. And they don't always, present their story right away because, one, it's very personal, but two, there's a concern that people are going to think they're crazy. So these events, these NDEs, actually happen more often than we realize, but people just hold on to them, and so they're all around us. People just aren't always sharing. But Dr. Habermas has done a lot of work with NDEs, and it's really interesting the more you get into this. And we've had John Burke on, and we've talked a lot about NDEs here on this podcast. The evidence that they provide, not for Christianity per se, but certainly for the existence of an afterlife and the existence of the supernatural. Listen as Dr. Habermas talks to us about NDEs. Man, are you looking to obtain or upgrade your insurance? Well, let me tell you about Robert Kelly, call sign Risk. He is with On Track Insurance Solutions, and he can help you with home, auto, health, or even workers' comp insurance. You can contact Risk at 804-931-6646. Talking about NDEs here, these near-death experiences, these are so widespread. People of all different ages, people of all different continents, all different walks of life are saying the same, very similar things. And so this being non-biblical and agreed on by everyone, at least the fact that they're claiming it is agreed on.
Oh, sure.
Everyone.
Sure.
NDEs could almost be another point in a minimal facts argument, because the skeptic has to, how do you explain that? How do you explain all the NDEs?
Yeah, I often start with NDEs. Or if a guy says to me, to extend that critique, there's nothing like the universe you believe in. To that kind of person, I'll say, okay, time out. Let's talk about NDEs. And after 15, 20 minutes, my point will be, if there's an afterlife, you can't blow the resurrection away like Rudolf Bultmann did. What do we say of the resurrection? It's a myth, pure and simple. If there's an afterlife, you have to listen to arguments for afterlife. If the field is true, you've got to listen for things in the field. If you say physics is the number one science, is the head of the scientific list, and I have a physical theory that you haven't thought about that, if I'm a PhD in physics and I know my stuff, you either have a duty to listen or at least not to keep talking it down without giving it a say. And I think that's the main thing. NDEs open the door. Resurrection gives the evidence for why the resurrection is a case. I don't want to say it's a case of NDEs. It's much more than an NDE, but it's a case of afterlife phenomena. I just did an article for Secular Press that has 4 arguments for an afterlife. And 3 of them have nothing necessarily to do with Christianity. 3 of them. So if I'm going to give you one, the first one's the resurrection. If I'm going to give you one and it's with 3 others, you need to listen to my data. At least listen to it. So.
Let's talk for a second. Let's go back to the shroud. I've recently seen an article with AI now that this is so prominent. AI has been unable to give an answer, which I think this is an interesting new data point. AI cannot come up with a way in which the shroud could have been manufactured by human means. What I'm just curious, your personal opinion on the shroud. What sort of authenticity do you give it?
I've co-authored 2 books on the shroud, so I have a view. I'm often asked about it, but I say co-authored. My co-author was the editor and spokesperson for the team of scientists that investigated the shroud in the famous 1978 experiments. They were called STIRRUP, the Shroud of Turin Research Project. He was the editor and spokesman for the group. He was my co-author. I think the shroud is a good evidence to be brought into the discussion, especially now when there's been 50 years of attempted natural responses. But I don't think, if you gave me a choice of the shroud or the minimal facts, I would take the minimal facts and run.
Yeah,
because I think
absolutely.
the evidence is, the minimal facts, things come in from too many angles. The shroud has one loophole, and the loophole is not specific, but it's this. What if somebody fakes it and it passes all the tests, and that happens next month? Then what happens? Okay, now I'll tell you what. If somebody can fake it, that doesn't mean that's how the shroud was produced. It just means it's a possible way. Now you got to show us. I mean, come on, you got to go through all the steps you would expect us to go through if we said we could prove it. If you think you can fake it, tell us that they did that on the shroud. Don't tell us they used lasers to make an image that made a superficial image on the front of the shroud only. But you have to show that A, it happened. Your theory works, and B, it's how the shroud was created. Because that's out there, when people say to me, I make the shroud folks, the shroud crowd, I call them, a lot of other people call them that, I get them upset a little bit because they say, how sure are you the shroud of Jesus is? And I'll just make a little joke and I'll say, it depends on what side of the bed I got up on, or if the sun is out, or if it's raining when I get up. And I would put the shroud at 80%. On a good day, I might say 85. But I put the resurrection way above that. And I'll make this comment too. I think NDEs are virtually indisputable. So you go, oh, you think NDEs are the best evidence? No, I really don't. And here's the reason. NDEs may be the best evidence for an afterlife, but NDEs only say you're going to live for a while. And sometimes you have evidences for people. It's a long story, but some of the NDE accounts involve people who've been dead for 10. It's not a seance.
Yeah.
But it involves people who've been dead for 10, 20, 30, once in a while, 50 years. Okay, so maybe you'll live for 100 years, but it's not eternal life. And the resurrection is an argument that part and parcel of the resurrection is that more than any other fact in the New Testament, almost 20, I had a fellow, just a very good scholar, just questioned me lately, why do you say the believer's resurrection is the most common thing that follows from the resurrection? Because it is. All you got to do is count. And in the New Testament, there's almost 20 references to believers rising because of Jesus. And we're as immortal as he is at that point. So the resurrection gives you immortality. The shroud gives you an afterlife. So I will take the resurrection as the best evidence. But man, the data for the NDEs really help.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I agree with you about the shroud. It's to me, it's a very interesting thing. It might be authentic, it might not be. I'm certainly not basing my beliefs on it. Like you said, the minimal facts argument all day. I'm curious because this is a question I have. I don't really know how I even do this, so I'm just looking here. How do you reconcile NDEs with your theology?
I say, if someone asks me that in a Q&A, and I get it a fair amount after I speak on the resurrection, without even hardly mentioning NDEs, if I mention them at all.
Yeah.
And
it's a hot topic.
Yeah. And what I'll say, I can say this with a straight face and totally sure, it's not the slightest issue for the Christian faith. And there's a real easy principle that I use that I suppose what you tell me this is what you're talking about, something like, well, I don't know. When I've read shroud studies, Buddhists see a Buddhist figure, Hindus see a Hindu figure, other religions see their own holy persons, and Christians say they saw Jesus, but everybody's saying the same thing. So I think it's an argument for all religions being a way to God. Is that what you mean by the argument? That question makes us question?
No, I think what I'm getting at is the Christians who are dismissive of NDEs by saying, it's appointed unto man once to die, and after that, the judgment.
Well, let me ask you. You know some people in your life who've died, right? Some people very close to you, or good friends, anybody.
Mm-hmm.
My mother used to say, she died at 92. She used to say, I'm ready to go, strong Christian. I'm ready to go. I want to go, because there reaches a point, she said, where more people are on the other side than are here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's amazing. But if you use an argument like that, I mean, it doesn't bother you about that other people claim to see other things, and that's not the main point for you then.
Right. Yeah, I think, the Christians who say you can't die and come back. If you die, you die. If you're dead, you're dead.
Let me, to me, that's well, you hear it a lot less. But here's a number of reasons. Number one, let me ask you, think about somebody that you know, very close to you, and they died 5-10 years ago. Have they had judgment yet? It's appointed unto man once to die, and after that the judgment. Has judgment even occurred?
That's a good point.
And if it doesn't occur for 1,000 years, 100 years, 10 years, what are they doing during that time? I don't mean they can just float around and come back. I'm just saying that verse makes it sound like you die, you're going to meet Jesus and find out if your rewards are good for you or not so good for you, And but that judgment hasn't even come yet, so I don't see it as a problem.
Okay.
Pardon?
No, I would say okay.
Okay, here's the main thing I use. I have a rule. If you have an NDE that you want me to consider, you have to have data for it. Now, I'll make up one that isn't one of the ones I have. But if I'm in a room at work, no windows in here, and one of my associates falls over and has a heart attack, no windows. The EMTs get there, they nurse him back to health. He's alive, he's stable, and they're taking him off to the hospital. And he tells me, there's a did you guys hear a big noise? Yeah. There was a big boom outside somewhere, but we were concerned about you. We didn't go check. Well, it's a red car and a blue car, and the guy who drove the red car was an idiot. He went through a stop sign, and the guy plowed into him, but it was the red car's fault. I don't know what's going on. And then you go and get a police report, and the police report says the accident happened 10 minutes after his NDE did, and they had it resolved before the NDE was over. That's what I call evidence.
Yeah.
But you don't have that. You only have that kind of data about this world. We don't have it about the heavenly part. Well, I went to heaven and I saw Jesus. Okay, with all due respect, I love to hear your view. You may have seen Jesus, but I have no evidence that you saw anybody. Secondly, that you know for sure. Did he say it was Jesus? Even if he did, that doesn't prove anything. But did he say it was Jesus? No. I just thought that because he fit the bill. Okay, all right. See, it's not so tight. Then a friend of mine, Steve Miller, just did a book on checking a whole bunch of NDEs, and he asked them, did you go to the second stage? Did you see somebody? And all the ones that said yes, he collected them. All right, and this is a worldwide NDE survey. What are you? I'm a Buddhist. Who did you see up there? I don't know. It was a holy figure. Was it Buddha? No, it wasn't Buddha. So Buddha's not mentioned. How about the Hindu gods? Well, they had 6 arms and 4 legs, and no, none of them say they saw anybody like that. Muhammad was never mentioned from these NDEs that he drew out. But 20 out of 100 people said they saw Jesus, and here's the key. Many of them were not Christians.
Yeah.
All right. Does that make me believe it? No. I still don't have any proof that they saw Jesus. It makes me feel better. I think it shoots that world religious. It's, but I don't have evidence, so I can't believe that part anyway. I can only tell you about car accidents and things that happen in this world that are verified. So I think that answers the questions. And I'll give you another reason. There are NDEs in the Bible. So that Peter, Stephen, before he's stoned and dies, he sees Jesus on the right hand of God. Jesus is, some people call it a true whatever. I think it's a parable, big deal. Luke 16, the rich man and Lazarus. And the rich man, not his buddy Lazarus, but another guy named Lazarus, he dies and he's carried by angels to Abraham's bosom. That's an NDE. Now, the guy doesn't come back. He's dead. But if you believe Jesus speaks the truth when he speaks, he's telling you what happened to this guy after death. And he met Abraham. Okay, he tells me that. So if that's good, that guy had an NDE, even though he didn't return. We have that by special revelation. We have Stephen. Paul, 2 Corinthians 12, I know a man 12 years ago, whether in the body or out of the body, I know not which. Then he says it's him. The old commentaries, I have a couple of right over here on my shelf. Before NDE studies were popular, there are a couple major, I understand the Ryrie Study Bible. Ryrie, with his 2 doctorates, said if you work the 12 years back, it's give or take within the parameter of when Paul was in Lystra and stoned and left for dead. That experience in 2 Corinthians 12. I just don't think Scripture has any qualms with supernatural questions. Now, if it's demonic or is there anything like that, we've got to be careful. But that's not in the New Testament like that. Yeah, so I don't think I have to buy that. I think since they're there, since they're highly evidenced, since I don't know what happens in stage 2, I have over 5. Okay, I wrote 3 major things on NDEs. When the first one was written in 2015 or 16, I had 300 evidential cases. Now, some of them were just small evidence, but a handful of them at that time, 20 of them, were really good. I just did this new one. I just sent it in this year, 2025, and my number is up from 300 to over 500 cases, and there's probably 40, 50, 60, 70 highly evidenced cases. In fact, I divide the evidence into 5 categories. I can say them in a sentence. Evidence from inside the room, the surgery. Evidence outside the room, somewhere else in the parking lot, the waiting room down the hall, or 3 floors away. Number 3, blind people who've never seen anything before or after the NDE, but they give you an evidential NDE, and then they're blind again when it's over. And 4 and 5 won't be able to explain. It takes too long. But they're Twilight Zone cases. There are over 100 registered cases by an MD, a psychiatrist, who also has a PhD in philosophy, pretty cool. But he's got an MD in psychiatry. He's got over 100 cases of healthy people sharing an NDE with an NDEer. And they go up together, for example. Or they watch them and their body's still in the bed. This is a real case. And they watch the person's spirit, whatever, raise up off the body, but they look back and the body's still in the bed, and they watch it, and there was an orb of light over the bed. It opens up into like a tunnel, and the 5 people, that's another thing, there are 5 witnesses, they watch the person go up the tunnel and out of sight. It's shared by alive, healthy people. The last one is the Twilight Zone kind. They will sometimes, a person who appears to them, a father, will tell them something that's a big, huge problem in the family, and they've not been able to solve it since Dad died 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Dad tells them what brings it together, or he shows them where a document is. Nobody has it. They find it later. There's a bunch of those.
Wow.
And the 4th and 5th categories are 2 of the heaviest, and the ones outside the room, they're just knockouts. And so if you get 5 different angles like this, that just piles the evidence on top of each other.
That's incredible. And you said you just submitted this, so this is going to be a new book coming out?
No, these are long articles,
Okay.
essays, and two of them have been published already.
Okay.
One is this is a secular book. They call themselves the #1 academic press in the world. It's Bloomsbury Blackwell. Sorry, it's Wiley Blackwell. The other one is now buying up companies, but Wiley bought Blackwell. It used to be called Blackwell. They're out of Oxford, England, and it was a book on whether dualism is true. And that's
Okay.
the one in 2016 or whatever it was, where I had 300. I did one with a second one with Discover Press. These are the guys. This is Bill Dembski and Steve Meyer and those guys,
Mhm.
Intelligent Design. And that's not the first one was a debate book, or the two sides debate. The second one is all about dualism again, but it's only believing philosophers who do it and a few scientists. But like J.P. Moreland said to me, they were just doing this book, and I wasn't a part of it. I wasn't worried about it. And then somebody said, "Hey, get Habermas." And they called me and they said, "Can you do your NDE book?" And JP, a super, super good friend, who pray for him. He's had 8 bouts with cancer now, and he's still struggling with 2.
Wow.
So
Wow.
pray for him. But JP said to me in his teasing way, if you know him, he said, "Habermas, you got the only empirical chapter in this book. You better do a good job." Like that. Okay, so I did one on NDEs, and it's twice as long as the first one with a lot more data. The third one I just handed in. It's for Wiley Blackwell again, the secular company, and it's on 4. It's the one I already mentioned to you. 4 different arguments for an afterlife.
Okay.
And NDEs is only one of the 4, and that's not out yet. But
Well, I look forward to that.
First one with Blackwell, the second one with Discover Institute Press, they're both out.
Okay. Awesome. Now, in addition to being an eminent author and speaker, Dr. Habermas also has a pretty unusual hobby. I heard about this, and so I snuck in this question to surprise him at the end. Check out his unusual hobby. I have one last question for you that's it's highly theological. And my good friend Mike Flynn wants me to ask you if you've caught a copperhead this year.
Ha ha ha. No, but my son, who lives 1 mile from me here, his next door neighbor, the short story is, a copperhead. This is a residential area. It's not out in the woods. A copperhead bit his dog in the face, and he had to go to the vets. His dog almost died. He went out to this twig pile in his backyard, and he killed 3 copperheads. That's about 100 feet from my son's lot line, and he's got a 3-year-old. I would whenever I'm there, he'll tell you. You can see from his back porch, you can see the whole yard. It's a big yard, but you see the whole yard because copperheads are very distinctive, and his lawn is very green. And I would like to, not in his backyard because I got a granddaughter, but my son-in-law has killed copperheads, and they live about 25 miles outside the city, and there is a woods there. No, I haven't caught one. A lot of people don't know this, and that's what you're referring to, but I've grown up snake hunting, and I've had 50-something snakes in my house at one time. Now, they're all in cages, and I don't use them in worship. That's the 2 things. They're all in cages, and I don't use them in worship. But I've caught rattlesnakes.
But you would pick one up.
Yes, I would. I have a snake stick. It's 10 feet away from me that I could grab quickly if I saw one in the backyard. I've got a snake stick. But I'm not going to tell anybody how because I don't want to get anybody bitten. But you can catch a copperhead with a stick that's 3 feet long that you pick up on the grass before you catch him. All I got to do is keep his head away from his tail and pick him up by his tail.
Oh, man. Just that thought just creeps me out.
Nah, I've got a buddy, my snake hunting buddy up in Michigan. He had a pet copperhead for 5 years. I don't know. And he took them to exhibits all the time. And I won't tell you the story because it wasn't a stupid mistake kind of thing. Well, it kind of was, but not the kind you think of where you didn't close the lid or something. He got bit by the copperhead. He also got bit by one of his rattlesnakes, this buddy of mine. He had to go to the hospital for the rattlesnake. Had to be there for 3 days. But the copperhead, he called the emergency room and he said, I'm not coming in, okay? I'm not coming in because I can't afford your shot that you charge for anti-venom. And I'm leaving tomorrow for Florida. He's in Western Michigan. I'm leaving tomorrow for Florida. And I just want to know, medically, what should I look out for? Because I ain't coming in. And they said, okay, fine. Here's 2 things. If your skin turns black, like necrosis, like if it turns black, you got to come in. You're going to be losing flesh. And secondly, if the hand swells so big that you can't deal with it. He goes, good enough. That won't happen. He got in the car and he drove all the way to Florida with one hand because he couldn't use the hand that got bit. He sent me a picture of it. His thumb looked like Kentucky Fried Chicken drumstick.
And he got better on his own? His body fought it?
He got better in about a week, and I've never heard this before. I've got to talk to an expert about it. He got better in a week, and then about a week later, after he got over it, it started hurting and it puffed up again. His thumb puffed up again, but it went away in a week and it's never come back. Copperheads are the least dangerous of the 4 major poisonous snakes in America. That doesn't mean go and get bitten by them.
I'm just staying away from all of them.
Well, you don't want to get bitten by an eastern diamondback or a western diamondback or a coral snake.
No.
There is a kind of rattlesnake in the Southwest. They think it has both kinds of venom, the kind that the coral snake has and the kind that the rattlesnake has. In other words, it's the kind that affects your flesh and the kind that affects your nerves. It's got both. The nerve one, the coral snake, is the same kind that the cobras have. And he had one. He had a 4-footer that had the 2 kinds of venom in his home for about 2 years.
Wow. Well, you know, I knew it had gotten leaked to me that you were a snake hunter. And
I love him.
Yeah,
I love him in that sense.
Had to bring that up. You're a man of many hats.
I hope you cut that question out of the interview.
Absolutely not. No way. People want to hear that.
Are you serious? I don't want. Oh, here's the reason I said I hope you cut it out. I'm not an expert on snakes in that sense, and I don't want to give the part you probably need to cut out.
We'll put a caveat on it.
Is the one where I said you pick up a stick in your backyard, you can pick up a copperhead. People do it all the time. Yeah. I'm just not going to let you be the guy who's never done it before, and a thing turns around and gets you while you're goofing around picking up the steak. He bites you.
Yeah, I'm not going to try it, but I admire your courage.
It's not courage. I like them.
There you have it, guys. What a conversation. Thank you so much to Dr. Habermas for being on, for taking the time out to talk to us. We covered everything from his personal season of doubt and even coming close to Buddhism to his season of personal tragedy. We talked about near-death experiences and what to say to that friend who's not quite ready to become a Christian. So much great stuff. I highly encourage you guys to read the books, The Case for the Resurrection, as well as The Historical Jesus. Both are tremendous books by Dr. Habermas. We'll put those in the show notes. It was a real pleasure and honor to get to talk to him, and hopefully we get to have him back on again soon. Hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. To find out more about what we are doing in Men's Alliance, go to men'salliancetribe.com. This will help you find a tribe near you. We have grown so much over the past few years. There are thousands of tribesmen all over the country in hundreds of tribes. We're growing every single week. Go to men'salliancetribe.com. find a tribe near you, or maybe you're the man to start one in your area.